first things that we're going to talk about is something called a hierarchy of writing. So this is where you need to take your notebook out. We're going to spend this first week kind of taking notes and lecturing about things, and then we're really going to start diving into how to actually write and more workshop kind of a thing. So grab your notebooks, grab your pens, you're going to start writing now. Anybody ever heard of the word hierarchy? And it's spelled like this. And if you've never heard of it, you probably have, but don't even realize it. And if you're answering me right now, I have no idea, but I hope you are. Hierarchies. Think of a deck of cards, or royalty, or a chain of command in an army. That's what a hierarchy is talking about. So based on those examples, what do you think it is? I hear you answering me, I swear I do. A hierarchy is just a ranking system. So in writing, there is a hierarchy or a ranking system of the stuff in your papers or your essays that's most important and least important. And that's what I want to go through right now. So the first thing that's most important when you're writing is content. And there are 5 of these, just in case you are the type to plan out your notebook. So the highest and most important element on our hierarchy when you're writing is content. So what is content? Insert answers here. Content, hopefully you've answered me at this point, is the stuff you're saying. And that's as easy of a definition as I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be anything technical or from the book. Content is the stuff that you're trying to say in your essay, the actual information and the points that you're trying to get across. So why do you think that this is the most important thing? If you're watching this at home, hit pause. If you're in a classroom with a substitute, have them hit pause now and talk about it. Hello, welcome back. Content is the most important thing because if you can't get your point across and if you can't clearly explain what you're trying to say, nobody's going to get it. So if I'm standing in front of this camera right now and I'm doing these lectures and you can't follow anything I'm saying, how in the world is this supposed to be helpful to you? It ain't gonna be. So I have to make sure that the stuff coming out of my mouth actually makes sense. I had a game plan before I came into this, and that I'm getting my point across the way that I want to. So that's why content is the most important. The next step on our hierarchy is organization. And I know this definition kind of sounds exactly like the word or is the word, but organization is more than the overall paper. Organization is the way that you're going to order your thoughts. One thing that kind of scares beginning writers, you'll have to watch out for typos or if I misspell something because nobody can tell me right now. And yeah, I'm a writing teacher, but I still make mistakes. One of the scariest things for beginning writers, which we'll call you guys kind of are, is that all of this is up to you. What you say, what your topic is, the order you put it in, how well you spell it, mistakes you make, fact errors, which we'll talk about. But all of this stuff is up to you. That's why I said earlier, you're kind of your own island, and you can't compare yourself to anybody else. But organization is the next step on our hierarchy, because if you don't put things in a proper order, people are not going to be able to follow them. So if you flipped open your syllabus to the list of the weeks of things that are going to get covered in any class, you're going to notice that as a teacher, I need to tell you things today before I can tell you the stuff that's going to come up 5 days from now. Because if I never teach you this stuff, you're not going to understand that stuff. And that's one of your jobs as an author or a writer. And it sounds weird for me to use those terms, but I'm going to keep calling you that so you get used to that role and used to that job. But if you don't tell your reader the basics and get them up on your concept and explain what you're talking about, they're not going to understand the facts or the points that you bring up later because they have no idea what this is. So, for example, I had a student doing a causality paper, which you guys are going to be doing. And causality is just a fancy word in English land that means cause and effect. So he chose his own topic, just like you guys will. And he decided to make his topic the causes that led up to communism and the effects that communism had in Russia. I might be good in English, and I might be really good in math, but I suck at history. I am horrible at history, hated it in high school, hate reading about it now because I'm not interested in it, but I do anyway because I like my kids. And you guys, I don't have any of my own, but you guys, kids, I hate reading history papers because I'm not interested in the topic. So, for me, because I'm not interested in that subject and I'm not good at it and I don't remember facts about it, for me it puts even more pressure on the writer because they really need to explain it. So, he wrote this paper on the causes of communism and the effects that it had. He did a great job explaining the causes, and he did a great job explaining the effects. The problem was that I got to the end of his 6-page paper, and no, yours isn't that long, don't panic. He never, ever, ever, in any of those 6 pages, explained what communism is at all, ever. He didn't put it in. So I was a little lost through the whole thing because he didn't organize his content the right way. He wasn't able to set me up the right way for me to be able to understand the rest of the points that were coming along later. And it's a shame because it was a really good paper, but for someone who's never heard of communism, doesn't know what it is, doesn't know the theories or concepts or rules behind it, they're lost. And he referred to all of those things in his paper, but never defined the concept of communism. So he went a little wrong in his organization on that one. So the next thing on our tier, or our hierarchy, is style. Now, the problem with style is that I can't teach you style at all. Not because I suck. Maybe I do. But because each of you are going to have your own complete distinctive style, and we're not going to be able to see what that is until after you've written a couple different things, and then we'll be able to see your style. What I can do is teach you the components that are involved in style. So, what is style? Talk amongst yourselves, start throwing out ideas, because I can't hear you, but I'm sure they're all at least close to being right, if not completely right. Are you still talking? Do you have answers? We good? Style is how you say stuff. So, I have what you say, the order you say it, and how you say it. There's a big difference between this. So, for example, do you ever get into an argument with somebody or talking to somebody and they say something? So, for example, my husband, instead, when a girl is upset and something is bothering them, and if there are ladies in the room, you can probably relate to this, but when something's bothering us and we get asked what's wrong the first time, we always say nothing, even though something's wrong, right? We usually need by the second or the third, what's the matter, what's bothering you, are you okay, what do you need kind of a question before we start to talk. So, my husband sits there all the time, and while he means, are you okay? What's the matter? What do you need? That isn't what he says. What he says is,
The hell's wrong with you?
that's what I get. He's a good man. Obviously, I married him. But how he says the same thing makes me defensive. I don't want to answer him. I get aggravated. You all know what I'm talking about. So someone might mean to say something nicely, but just how it comes across completely changes the message and changes the meaning. This is what we're talking about. And not that you're going to do that in your paper and be like, hey, what the hell's wrong with you? You're not going to do that. But there are things that create style. So these are the elements that I can teach you. They include things like sentence structure. And if you don't know what that is, no big deal, we'll teach you. The vocabulary that you use. Sometimes you could use humor if you'd like. And how you punctuate things. And if you don't know how to use punctuation, we can teach you that too. It's no big deal. So, sentence structure is whether you use simple sentences, complex, compound, the order that you put them in, and how you set up your sentences. If I just said a lot of words you don't know, we'll get there. Different vocabulary use. You don't need to go home and start reading dictionaries and thesauruses and thesauri or whatever the plural is. You don't need to go home and start doing that stuff. It's using creative language in different places. So here's an example. When you want to make chicken and you want it to be infused with a lot of good juices, what do you usually do with it ahead of time? You put it in a bowl, you put it in the fridge, you put the juice in and you let it soak, marinate, right? So when you're letting it marinate, you're letting it sit and soak up the juices. So if I asked you guys to think about a topic and sit there and let a concept marinate, all I did was take a different vocabulary word and put it in the sentence, and it makes it a little bit my own style. Instead of saying, why don't you guys sit there and think about it, to say, sit there and let it marinate. I'm talking about letting the thought marinate instead of the chicken. So it's just stuff like that. It doesn't mean you have to go and learn all these fabulous big words, hyperbole and iota and superfluous and all that kind of, you don't need to know those words. It's how you use the words you already know in a creative way or a funny way to an extent. So the next thing, we're almost done because we are at level 4. The next thing, the fourth step, is grammar. So what's grammar, aside from the thing everybody hates, usually? Do we know? Sometimes grammar is one of those things that we know what it is, but we can't define what it is. So if you're throwing answers amongst yourselves, good, I'll write while you're doing that. Mainly, grammar includes parts of speech, and if you don't remember what those are, we'll go over them, and sentence structure. So I know I have this here and I have this here, but it means two different things. So under style, sentence structure means, do you use sentences effectively, and do you know how to put together different styles of sentences? That's what it means up here. Down here means, do you actually know how to make a sentence? Or do you have a paper full of sentence fragments, which is a fancy word for saying an incomplete sentence, which are those things that make your body go. So for example, after Mom and I baked the cookies, if you had that in your paper with a period after it, the reader wouldn't get it because it's not a full sentence. So if you don't even know how to make a sentence, that's how it falls under grammar. And if you don't know how to make a sentence, we'll get you there, no big deal. So the last step on our hierarchy is mechanics. And in this case, I am not talking about the fabulous men and women who clean our cars and fix, or not clean our cars, but fix our cars so it keeps running well. In this case, I'm talking about the things that usually freak people out the most, yet they're at the bottom of the hierarchy. So, the things that are in mechanics are spelling, punctuation, so I want you to take a second, and I know all of you have different anxieties and fears going into this class, but I want you to take a second and think about the thing that freaks you out the most. Did I almost point at you? Do you need 3D glasses? That would be kind of cool. Think about the thing that's freaking you out the most in this class right now. You're sitting there thinking, oh my god, I'm such a bad speller, or I don't really know a lot of vocab words. If that's what you're thinking about, see where it falls on our hierarchy. And I'm going to get out of the way so you can do that. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, and you see where your fears lie, is it as important as you're making it, is ultimately the question. So, put me on pause for a second. And I want you as a class, if you're together, if you're at home, pause me anyway and do this. But I want you to go through, if you're together, and all of you say what area you're most worried about. And if there's a substitute in the room, she'll put a little hash mark next to it so she can keep count, to see where all of you fall into place. If all of you fall somewhere in here, stop worrying about it. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's not as important as you're making it. So put me on pause. Okay, I'm assuming you've unpaused me. How many of you fell down here? I'm assuming, because I'm not with you, it's probably a majority of you were in these areas and at organization, because that's statistically where I fall. That's where my students fall. If you didn't, and I'm totally wrong, I just made an idiot out of myself. But if you're worried about these areas, not that big of a deal. We could fix them. These are the least important areas to a reader. They are important because they show that you really know what you're doing, but these are the small, fine skills we could work on later. If your area is up here in organization, which sometimes students are worried about, then there are different tools we're going to go through to show you how to make your thoughts more organized. If your issue is style, again, that will come. That is not something you might have right now. You might not have style for 3 or 4 weeks. You might not have style until we hit English 2. It won't be that long, I'll tell you right now. Your style will start to come out by your 2nd or 3rd essay, but just so you know. If you're worried about content, because I have it listed as the most important, don't let the pressure get to you. If you know what you're talking about, you'll be fine. So, if I didn't know anything about English, if I didn't know how to teach this class, this video would be looking a lot different. I would be umming and ing a lot. My lecture really wouldn't flow that well. And I'd be stuck because I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But when you know the topic, when you know the material, you can get it out. It'll be fine. So, here's your list of things to worry about.